Hey, Jonathan.
Sorry, hello, how are you?
Good. Sorry, I was not at my computer, so I could not. That's why I sent Andy that thing saying, "Did we get an invite?" Is the
Oh, I
invite
understand.
is the invite the same every month? Can I just click on?
Yes, it is. He usually sends me a list of all the people who are invited to the meeting, and
Yep.
I didn't check it over before I just sent it out. Otherwise, I would have asked about that. So in the future, I'll just make sure that you've got it.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Hey, Lorraine, I haven't met you. I'm Barb. I don't know if she's on. So big decision to open Minor Street.
Yeah, I don't know if you're seeing the pictures CDOT sent, but they have taken a big chunk of the parking lots for the construction project, more than was initially expected. And so we thought this would help kind of alleviate some of that. And there's also supposed to be fairly terrible weather at the end of the week. So
People can just scoot in and scoot out.
yeah, we're going to make some pickup and takeout spaces on each block, and hopefully that'll help too. So
So Lorraine is on twice.
yeah, I'm not quite sure what the story is there. I think.
Hi, John.
Hi, hello.
Hey, Lorraine, I haven't met you. I'm Barb.
Barb, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I actually had questions for you that maybe I can send you an email sometime.
Okay.
All of us that are consultants are sort of billing people differently. And so we might want to talk about consistency.
All right. What is your firm bill for?
So we're serving as the interim community development planner.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're flat out on a whole bunch of stuff. But
yeah, imagine that you may have some charges that get passed along to developers. Is that correct?
yeah, and that's what I wanted to make sure that, I mean, over the last 40 years, I've worked for lots of municipalities, I think including some that maybe you were in, but I just want to make sure that we've got it set up correctly, because that's always an issue that I think Wonder's doing a really good job. But I don't know if it's reflected correctly when the bills go to city council, because we lump everything together.
All right. Yeah, I can take a look at that at some point and see what in specific you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Everybody, we are live streaming at this point, just so you're aware.
We had our case, but she's fine. And then one of the other employees, his wife and kids live here, and they're all being tested.
Your mom so much too proud of you.
Hello.
Hey, I think I might need the meeting invite for the work session. I don't know if I got that. I'm just scrolling through your emails here.
I sent it to everybody except for you and Diane. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Here it
All
comes.
right. Does that mean I can go home?
Yeah, it does.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
And Jonathan, there are 2 Diane Bruces on the screen.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about that. I apologize. I'm not quite sure who the second is. I'll fix it as soon as I figure out who that voice is.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Bob.
Greetings.
All right. Do we have everybody?
Not yet.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I know. Shush. I will.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound.
Who is that, John?
It's Carmen.
There are 18 participants in the meeting. You have been added to the waiting room. You cannot talk or listen until the host.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 6:04, October 19th, Monday, 2020. Are we still in 2020? This is our work session with the city of Idaho Springs, and we have a few agenda items tonight, and we're going to get started. We have Amy Saxton from the county is proposing and talking about the Clear Creek Recreation Planning. Amy?
Hi there. Thanks, Mayor Hiltman. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Amy Saxton. Just very briefly, for those who I haven't met yet, I got involved here in the county about 3 years ago with the Clear Creek Greenway Authority. Moved on from that to work at the county serving as transportation liaison, and most recently have changed roles there in connection with a reorganization at the county. We created a new division called the Strategic and Community Planning Division, sort of a reorganization of the Community Development Department. It includes planning and building services, the housing department. I'm continuing to do transportation advocacy, and we created a recreation department, which was one of the motivations in doing the restructure. And that recreation department includes open space and the trails crew at this point in time. And one of the first things we identified as a critical need was to create a countywide recreation plan. So I wanted to talk to you about that tonight. We do need Idaho Springs' participation as one of the land managers in the county, along with open space, HDPLC, the other municipalities. those are the primary core team that really needs to be involved. And so we are hoping that Idaho Springs will help us out there. So I'm going to just, if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen and just walk through a presentation. It was in your packet, and there's just several points I'd like to highlight. I'm going to move through sort of fast because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do want to make a few points along the way. Please don't hesitate to jump right in if you have any comments along the way. Okay.
Oh, there we go, maybe.
So like I said, this is a countywide Clear Creek Recreation Plan. We are calling it the Recreation in the Outdoors Management Plan, or ROMP, the Clear Creek ROMP. And the idea is this is for the countywide, including the group called Local Land Managers. And that group includes the municipalities, HDPLC, and open space. And you'll see that term, local land managers, as I go through this, this presentation. The other land managers, of course, are federal and state land managers, and they are critical players in this as well. So I want to just highlight a few keys to success for this plan. One is that we want to have this plan be created from a community lens. We want to look at our amenities in Clear Creek County in terms of how they serve the community. One of the things I sort of realized was a relevant question in working on the Greenway was, like, who is the Greenway for? Is it for the residents of Clear Creek County, or is it for a statewide audience as part of a network of trails like the Peaks to Plains Trail? And you know, it's probably for both, but when we are working through this recreation plan, I feel like it's important to address it from a resident's viewpoint first. So that's community first engagement is one key. Another one is that this is a shared plan, that all of the local land managers are really weighing in and getting all of their perspectives engaged. And that perspective continues, that this plan, the idea is that this plan will not just sit on a shelf. It's not meant to be prescriptive or directive, but create guardrails, guidelines, a vision to help be an inspiration and help provide context. If you're looking to make a decision somewhere down the line, you can make it in the context of a longer term plan. I wanted to just acknowledge too that this plan does have some context in some of the prior work. There's been a lot of prior work done before I got involved. And in particular, the Community Development Master Plan for the county did identify a couple of key goals that have some parallels to the goals that we're going to be talking about here. So this is in your packet as well. You can take a closer look at that. I want to talk a little bit about the outcomes. First and foremost, like I was saying, we do want this plan to offer a shared vision to Idaho Springs, to Georgetown, to Silver Plume, and to the independent land managers like Open Space and HDPLC. We want to create some recommended actions, like we want to develop this spot to do this thing at this location, and create a list of recommended actions that are an outcome of this plan. We also want to identify a set of key partnerships that we want to develop, and start talking about what might be some sustainable funding options. I'm not 100% sure how far we're going to get on that. And we just want to be able to create enough of a shared sort of environment for recreation that we can operate as with coordinated efforts. So one of the ways we're thinking about making this plan happen is through a series of tiered groups. And this could change over time. And what we're looking at here, this structure is what the what Chaffee County used roughly in their plan called Envision Chaffee County, and that's in place now. So they used a steering committee of local land managers to sort of serve as client for to work with the consultant and put in some effort, make some decisions behind the scenes, sort of guide the process and make sure it was on track so that the process delivered against the desired outcomes, which is a little different than actually engaging in the planning work and having, being a voice at the table. The ROMP leadership team is the group where the subject matter experts and people with technical expertise and particular stakeholder perspectives are at the table and engaging in these particular plans. So that would include all the local land managers and other land managers in the county, activity specific groups like COMBA, conservation groups, relevant nonprofits, other county or municipal staff, and businesses that had a interest and something to contribute or a stake in the decisions or in the conversations about recreation planning. And then we also are hoping to create a cohort of community members that are engaged in a formal way, that are able to sort of serve as kind of a peer review and give us their perspective throughout the planning process, but also have a role and a responsibility to go out and spread the word and help people in the community understand, sort of be a messenger out into the community. For the planning process itself, we do want to really make sure that we're focusing on data, and we want to have an inclusive process that's not just transparent. So we're going to be using a variety of community engagement platforms, and just making sure all stakeholders are included, and that together that will all funnel down into a great plan. Thank you. So we are in what I'm calling phase 0 now. This is this pre-planning process. Earlier this month, we submitted a planning grant to CPW. You all, thank you, signed a support letter for that. We appreciate that. That grant CPW is a pretty slow grant responding grantor, so we will not actually hear about that until probably March. In the meantime, we don't want to get ahead of the grant, but we're trying to figure out what is the right sort of steps to take between now and then. And we do hope to have some level of participation from Idaho Springs in that. And what I'm leaning towards doing, I don't think it would be premature to do anything with an RFP or start trying to engage a consultant in any way. But I do think we might be able to start perhaps doing some surveys of our community or something like that, that I would be interested, that I would love to have assistance from Idaho Springs on. And then I'm going to just go through, we have some rough outlines for what we might be doing in phases 1, 2, and 3. We are dividing this plan into 3 phases, partly because, the reason we did that in part was because CPW has a maximum planning grant of $45,000, and that was not going to be enough to get us all the way through the full planning grant cycle or plan cycle. So we started off with phase 1, fact finding and issue identification. And the things that we think should be included in this phase 1 would be to sort of document the current status. And it might be that community surveys and things like that could play a role, and we could enter phase 1 with that in hand. So in addition, in phase 1, we would try to develop a consensus on vision, try to identify some values that we wanted to incorporate and reflect throughout this planning process. And I think we could benefit from developing things like definitions, like what is the range of items that we want to develop in this process? Passive parks, fully developed parks, how are those defined? How do we I think it would be useful to create sort of a menu of what are the things that we want to develop and be able to decide where they go and how we use them. And at the end of phase 1, we would end up with 3 to 5 main objectives that we're trying to fulfill in creating this plan. Just as an example, the Chaffee County plan had a variety of recreation goals, but they ended up having this secondary set of stuff in their plan that was around an issue relevant to their county and around agriculture. Now, obviously we don't have agriculture in Clear Creek County, but some issues that might be interesting would be to think about, do we want to do explore things like forest health on the side, or do a really deep dive on land use and get strategic about how we want to address all the land in Clear Creek County and the mining claims and all the different approaches to land, just as an example. Phase 2, we want to start identifying some options. We want to look at what are resources, try to start getting it into tasks and a plan. And by phase 3, really start having 30% designs on the areas we want to develop, start to have outlines and draft partnership agreements, and figure out how we're going to go forward on implementation from there. For a timeline, this project will take us through the end of 2022 is my projection. And the grant from CPW, we expect that to be decided in Q1 of 2021, and we anticipate that GOCO may be a good resource for the rest of the dollars for this planning grant. So that's my spiel. Any questions?
Amy, that was a good deal. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on Jimmy. There's that lag. Hey, I was just wondering, this might be before you're in your current position, but where did the county get that $35,000 for that grant match? Do you know?
We just allocated it in a capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure if they had the foresight to put that, last year in for this, but well, I'm glad we have it.
I have a comment and a question. Number one, it seems like the timing is really good for this, considering we have a relatively new board at the Recreation District and a brand new administration. And I imagine they're looking at maybe a new path with some of their activities. So I'm assuming that they're front and center in your thinking. Number two, I didn't see the tourism board mentioned. It seems to me they would have a role in this as well.
You're right. I did not include them on my list, but they would definitely have a role. And as far as the rec district, now I do kind of feel like there's a distinction between the work that the rec district does and what this plan would be addressing around outdoor recreation, which obviously there's a lot of outdoor recreation that the rec district manages around team sports and things like that. But I do think the work that's needed and the work that this would be focusing on would be more like hiking, mountain biking, backcountry trails, fishing, birding. Not that the rec district is definitely someone that we want at the table and a partner in this, but I think that it's just a little bit of a different view of recreation than what they focus on.
Right, but still the timing and the changes there, I think they may be
absolutely
that way.
Amy, this is Barb, and we're serving as the interim community development planner in Idaho Springs. We were invited, and I think we sort of assigned Jonathan to this, but Gilpin County, and particularly I think Central City, is doing a lot of trails planning also, and they had asked Idaho Springs to sort of be part of that Zoom group. So I don't know if you're part of that Zoom group, but if you're not, we should probably connect you.
That would be great. Yeah, excellent.
Jonathan, do you still have that information? Because I think we dumped that on your plate.
I don't see John Kane anymore.
I'm here, and I do, yes, I can connect you, Amy.
Thanks, John. And this also fits well, I think, with the work that's going on in the group called NOCO Places, which is, have you all heard of that? It's a regional group that is Gilpin County is involved with, as well as Jefferson, Larimer, Arapahoe, and Boulder, and the U.S. Forest Service and CPW are all engaged in a work of trying to coordinate towards a regional plan for 2050, which was a similar group that resulted in the sport shooting plan. That is why Clear Creek County is developing the shooting place by Dumont.
All right, council, does anybody else have any questions for Amy? All right, Amy, thank you for that presentation. We're really excited about this.
Thank you.
That we need to get done, and
Thank you.
good work.
Very good. Can I ask, is there any thoughts on who amongst you might be willing to be the go-to person for the rec planning work? Or shall we take that offline, as they say?
We always pick on John Kane, but I'm feeling guilty about that sort of thing anymore.
I certainly don't
Yeah,
mind.
we need to look at what John Kane's got on his plate already. So
Okay.
we'll get somebody on that committee, Amy, for sure.
Okay.
To be involved with that.
It's not at all urgent, so I just thought if we could discuss it now, great. If not, I'll circle back. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Amy.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna move on. The score is still 0-0, so nobody caught that. We will move to
I did.
Not
to
for
the
long.
Argo Gondola FDP. As you know, council,
myself.
we approved a final development plan for the Argo with some conditions and some exceptions. And as they were going through these, they're finding a few of these exceptions that would potentially not be done. Carmen, does Bob Bullen need to leave? Carmen?
Oh, well, he did leave, Mayor.
Yeah.
He did leave. I'm
Yeah,
in his position.
Let's see, Carmen, does Bob Bullen need to leave this conversation?
Yes. I think he-
Okay, good. Bob's gone. So the Argo group has presented to us a few items that they feel that's going to that would delay their project if we didn't make some sort of exceptions for them. So that's what we're here tonight to talk about, these few exceptions. I believe it's 3. Is that
That's
right?
correct. That's correct, Mike.
Yeah. So with that, who is gonna lead the discussion on this? Maybe Barb?
Yep. So in your packets, you have a short memo in color that walks through the 3 conditions that that Andy, Carmen, Tracy Lawless, John Bordoni, and I have been working through with the Argo team. So let me just go, and some of this is simply a matter of timing, if that helps sort of get your head around it. So the first condition was the water system shall be reviewed and approved by the city engineer prior to the issuance of a building permit. Staff and the Argo team have concluded that the trigger is not correct and that the trigger for that final review should be prior to certificate of occupancy. So where we are at this point in time, it's not like the city has not done a lot of review and a lot of approvals. So 1, Andy has issued a will serve letter, and a will serve letter basically says we have the capacity or the ability to provide water to you. And what Andy put in his letter is basically, again, this is not water to the site, because we're talking about the top of Rosa Gulch. So what Annie put is city facilities have the capacity to supply the necessary water for trucking to the site. JVA has reviewed the civil plans for that upper landing development and issued approval based on revised plans. So JVA and Argo have been going back and forth with the engineers. The engineers are now satisfied that at this point in the project, everything is good. But that's not the end of installing the system. So the proposed change allows the city to continue to conduct plan review for the complete water system and allow Argo to move forward with construction. So no one's held up, which I think is very important for this partnership. And again, the CO I recommended because that's a very easy thing to monitor. So nobody can use any of the facilities until they get a certificate of occupancy from Safe Build. And so I think staff, and it's really all of us, are okay with that change, with the caveat that is in Andy's letter, which basically says, as noted in my staff report, details of all agreements, including but not limited to any necessary capital construction, payment obligations for the same, fees for service, security requirements, procedures to unload the haul trucks shall be finalized before the Argo upper landing completes the water system is complete, commissioned, and operational. So again, the city is not giving up any right to review. It's just that we've already issued a will serve letter. We've sort of strongly suggested that we would like Argo to get the water from the city of Idaho Springs, thus the will serve letter. So that's where we are on condition 3. Questions?
Is that normal procedure to get it at the end of the certificate of occupancy instead of prior to review? Of issue as a permits, I'm sorry.
So Scott, nothing is normal about this project, okay? So when we get to the wastewater, you'll understand why it gets a little bit complicated. I mean, one, we're dealing with a Superfund site, and we're dealing, when we get to wastewater, and really the water system as a whole, it's not that the city gives up its rights, it's just that the jurisdiction is passed to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And so they're going to be doing a lot of the review, Scott. I think that staff and what we're now calling the Development Review Committee would feel good if Tracy and JVA just do that final review. And for example, if John Bordoni says, oh, to haul the water, we have this cost or whatever, that we can iron that out as we move forward, but not, in retrospect, maybe we all learned, but I think building permit was probably the wrong trigger given the complexity of this project. So
you say that Tracy and JVA are doing the review, but who is the city engineer then? Who does the final sign off?
Tracy.
Okay.
JVA. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're on it, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and very technical. But I feel comfortable. Andy might want to comment that we're really now on the right track, and more importantly, that all parties are talking to each other, which, given the complexity of this, I think is critically important.
Any other questions on this one, council?
Mike, can I make a clarification just for the record?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that the water treatment plant at the top, the wastewater treatment plant, has nothing to do with the Superfund site. They're totally distinct areas.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Ready to move on to condition 4?
Yes, please.
Okay. So again, this one, the initial condition was the wastewater system design shall be reviewed and approved by the city and the CDPHE prior to the issuance of the building permit. Well, again, probably the wrong trigger. So we are suggesting that the wastewater system design shall be reviewed by the city engineer prior to the certificate of occupancy. So again, the process of approving a private wastewater treatment system is really governed by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. What the city and Central Clear Creek County Health need to do as the first step is prior to them moving forward to design, they have to review and recommend approval of a site application for the upper Argo upper landing area reclaimed water treatment system. The site application permit is different from a building permit. It's basically saying to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, we're okay with this private system, and we have reviewed the conceptual design for this system, not the final design, the conceptual side. So what we've talked to Argo, JVA, and all parties about is, yes, so the city has also already approved that site application, and technically what now happens is this approval goes to the state level. But what we're saying here, and then the city did 2 other things. So the city also signed and submitted a letter to the State Water Quality Control Division regarding this project. And again, that was signed. So we've got all these interim preliminary approvals that city staff has provided to this project. We now understand, because Andy and I had a very lengthy discussion with the head of JVA, Kevin Tone, that the responsibility is now moving to CDPHE. And so that's why this says once they get through that, and again, the problem, if any of you are familiar with CDPHE, these guys are slow in normal times. My concern is how slow are they going to be in COVID times? But I think the Argo team has a very good relationship with them. So they have been able to move through the process in a timely manner. So again, this proposed change allows the city to continue to conduct plan review. Again, construction is allowed to proceed, but at the certificate of occupancy, right before that, the city engineer can sort of look and say, yeah, we're okay with everything. We're okay with these final details in terms of the biosolids, all this kind of stuff or whatever. So I think we're in a really good place. And maybe it took us a little bit of time to get there, but I think we're all satisfied that that's a good place to be.
Barb, in order to install the wastewater details, they're going to have to be reviewed before the installation of any wastewater system is installed, right? So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
they could go on with the rest of the construction, but the wastewater is not going to start until this is reviewed and approved, right?
No, but again, we're saying now that rather than it being approved at building permit, because it sort of becomes, Scott, out of our jurisdiction because of the nature of the system. And so all of a sudden, under some Article 22, I forget what the article number is, but CDPHE is the approving body. I think that in discussions with staff, including Carmen, what we just want to make sure is CDPHE says, yeah, this is all good or whatever, but Tracy, the city's engineer, has the opportunity to review that again and just say, yeah, this looks good, no issues on the part of the city. Bordoni might be able to look at it in terms of, there's a question about how you actually get the stuff that's trucked into the treatment plant. So those are just little details that need to be worked out. But I think I mean, the easiest way to explain this is when we first went into it, it was sort of like we thought, oh, there's one approval, okay, but there's not one approval. So what we now have, which I think is good, is we have approvals as we go along. So yes, the city approved the site application, as did the county, which allows them now to go into detailed design on this facility. But everybody is okay with where the facility is going. If you go up to the top of Rosa Gulch, it's actually signed, which I was surprised about. So I think the city is protected, and I think this is a good way to proceed because it allows them to continue to move forward.
Yeah, I think I understand the process, that these are two different animals that they're dealing with, and they'd be totally slowed down if they're waiting for wastewater approval or water approval, because you wouldn't be able to build
exactly
during that whole process. So I just can't see the design of it happening and then waiting till the end, because they're gonna be wanting to get that approved so that they can go forward with that part of the plan as well as the building part.
Correct.
So I don't see it being any risk to the city. If any risk is going to be involved with the builder, that they got to get it approved. They don't want to build a building and not have a wastewater or water system approved.
You're spot on, Scott.
Okay, on condition number 4, is there any questions from the rest of council? Okay, let's move down to condition number 9.
So condition number 9, Carmen, I might need your help, but I'll try and provide an overview. So Argo and Mary Jane are just lucky that they happen to have bought a piece of property of those 4 properties that are to be annexed, that the tiniest little sliver known as the alpha is in bankruptcy. And over the last couple of months, every time I talk to Mary Jane, Travis, or Brian, it's like, no, we're working on it. We talk to them all the time. It's going to be resolved. It's going to be resolved. Well, it's totally out of their control, and it's not getting resolved. So basically, you have a situation where those 4 parcels that council agreed to annex are all fine, except for this one little 0.07 acre sliver, this alpha claim, and that's needed for the upper landing construction. These guys, I mean, I'll tell you, Mary Jane and crew have done flips trying to get this resolved, and it's not moving. Okay, so I think we all realize it's not moving. On our Zoom calls with the Argo team, it's like, when will this be resolved? They have no idea, because it just keeps on going into sort of cyberspace. So in talking with Carmen, I think we're recognizing that this delay is totally outside of Argo's control, but that the city cannot approve or provide a building permit for any property that's not under their control. So Carmen has suggested that the county, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Carmen, provides some sort of letter stating, yes, we understand this is in bankruptcy. Yes, we understand that figure out these screwy little parcels, Argo's going to have to do in the county a minor boundary adjustment. But these guys want to build, and they need permission, and that permission cannot come from the city because the city has no authority over that teeny little parcel. Carmen, go for it.
Thanks, Barb. So to add to that, Mayor and Council, condition number 9, as it was approved, provides that annexation of those 4 upper parcels must be recorded prior to building permit. Again, that was a condition placed on the FDP, or the final development plan for phase 1, the gondola. So again, the condition is that annexation be recorded before building permit, before building activity. And the only issue here is annexation must be recorded. Why is that an issue? Prior to recording the annexation, if the annexation is approved by you, and it can be approved while we are waiting, while the Argo team is waiting for the release of the deed from the bankruptcy court. You as a city, we as a city, you as a council can approve the annexation pending and waiting for the release of that deed. Why? Because every party to the bankruptcy proceeding has provided written consent, their consent to the annexation. Nobody's saying, hey, no, hold on the annexation. Everybody agrees to the annexation. So the city could annex and just wait to record it with the county until basically this paperwork gets spit out by the bankruptcy court, such that the Argo team and Mary Jane can take that paperwork, go to the county, and get a boundary line adjustment to bring the parcel into the city. Okay, so we're waiting on this nicety of this paperwork to record the annexation. The reason I believe and suggest that county consent is even in the realm of needed here is after and if the city approves annexation through an annexation ordinance and approval of an annexation map, it's not yet a fait accompli that real estate is in the city. We have to record it for it to be effective. And so even though city consents and does all the legal review that the city is required to do by ordinance and map, it doesn't technically become effective until recorded. And again, we as a city have to wait to record that until we get the proper, basically, real estate paperwork. So Mayor and Council, even if and after the city adopts the annexation ordinance and approves it, until it's recorded, that property that's annexed is kind of in this nether region, this nether world of, it's not yet in the city and underneath in the city's jurisdiction. The county still has a potential claim to say, hey, we have regulatory authority over this land. Now, I don't think the county wants to do that. I don't think the county would. However, I think it's prudent and wise for the city to ask the county outright, hey, are you okay if development proceeds on this property even after the annexation ordinance is adopted, but before it's recorded? So I suggest that this condition be amended to say, hey, annexation, again, for development to continue, that the city has to approve the annexation. And that's all. That means the annexation ordinance and approval of the plat. I think that's an okay modification of that condition if we also get some sort of consent from the county that development on that property can proceed. Well, we're all just waiting for Godot here for the paperwork to file to make everything okay. And on that front, I will say Argo's been diligent we just talked about this late last week. Argo team sent an inquiry to the county and Fred Rolandhagen in county planning saying, could we get such a letter from you? Not surprisingly, the county said, what in the world are you talking about? And what sort of letter are you looking for? That response to the county, as you might imagine, found its way to me. I responded with some more background. And as you could maybe imagine even further, my response found its way to Bob Leffler, county attorney. Today, Bob and I have had some correspondence on this and are set to talk tomorrow. No real, well, I'll say that our preliminary discussions have been good and in a spirit of cooperation. I can't speak for whether or not the county will provide such a letter, but I'm sure willing to talk with them and provide whatever support I can to what the form of that might look like for the county's consideration. So happy to answer any questions.
So Carmen, I think the other thing to add to this, which you clarified for me and I found very helpful. So as you all know, as we've gone through these annexations, it's sort of you annex the property, you know, council blesses it, and then Carmen moves forward with an annexation agreement. In this case, Carmen made the point, rightly so, that we have a public improvement agreement that probably covers everything we need for an annexation agreement. So do you just want to talk a little bit about that piece, just so we don't forget that?
Sure. Just as you stated, typically annexation agreements are given with any annexation of a particular size or commercial ones. In this case, however, annexation of these parcels was expressly contemplated by the SDP that for phase one that has been approved, and that SDP had a public improvement agreement or PIA associated with it. And that PIA addresses the sorts of things we would see in an annexation agreement.
All right, does council have any questions? So what we need to do is council okay with giving direction to Carmen to craft a resolution that accepts all these modifications, if you will, on these conditions. Is council okay with that?
And okay, good. And to be clear, Mayor and Council and anybody who is watching out there, because this is an ask to modify the SDP conditions, you must do that formally and you must vote on that formally. We have noticed that for the next meeting. So we just kind of wanted to get a feel, and we'll do all this groundwork and background for you tonight. We will ask for your formal vote on that. So rest assured, whatever you express or say just now in terms of go ahead, prepare the ordinance or the resolution, you can still vote whichever way you wish, and you're not promising yourself or the public or anybody else that you're going to vote anyway next week. Okay? So I just want that to be real clear. Thank you, Mayor and Council. That was a lot of, and thank you, Barb and Argo team. That was a lot of work that we condensed into a summary of just a little bit there. And we appreciate your time and input to keep plowing forward on all this stuff. So thanks for that.
Carmen, Carmen, I have a question for you. I see
Yes.
where Barb was gone with nothing was the norm. This is a pretty odd, this third request too. Do you know if this has ever taken place anywhere else, the same type of situation? And I'm guessing that you're saying that we're within our legal bounds to do it this way.
Indeed. The answer to your first question is no, I've never seen this because I've unfortunately never seen Murphy's Law, a party that wanted to annex, be so stymied by a bankruptcy proceeding. That's their bad luck. So no, I've never seen this. And yes, I think it's okay to proceed with the process on the city's end regarding the annexation, because we won't record the thing until we're sure we have the proper sort of real estate and title work on it. And because we won't proceed with that, and we're being very upfront about that, then, you know, the risk, as you've observed before, is kind of elsewhere on this, and everything's quite transparent in terms of where that risk is allocated. But I have never seen this, probably never will again, but we'll see.
Well, and I always think of worst case scenario. You can't think of a worst case scenario that's going to come prop its head up and say this is not the way we should have handled this. And then the other thing is that I know bankruptcies get stretched out even way further than you might think they are. There's several things that can hold up a bankruptcy, and I could see this project being completed and then it's still in bankruptcy. That's the way bankruptcies work sometimes. So we could have a completed project and the annexation hasn't been recorded yet. That's not going to be a problem, right?
Right. Well, and to your question, you know, who could say, wait a minute, you shouldn't have done things this way? The party that I believe, right, has the standing to say, whoa, is the county. They, I think, is the entity that might have any ability to say, oh, wait a minute, county or city, what are you doing approving development on this property that has not yet been recorded as annexed? Which is precisely why I recommend that entity provide their consent with all the cards on the table to what's going on.
Does this modification need a public hearing, Carmen, or is this just a resolution?
We have noticed it as a public hearing, sir.
Okay.
Yep. And honestly, in the most conservative approach, in the excess of all caution, to make sure, right, that there is not, to Councilor Pennell's point, any potential claim from anybody that a procedural requirement was not followed. To amend a term or condition of an FDP, we're going to the max that we need to do by noticing it as a public hearing.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for answering those questions.
Can I
Any
just
other
add
questions
one
for
thing?
council?
May I add one thing, Mr. Mayor, as the applicant here?
Sure.
I just wanted to say this little tiny piece of property that we referred to is surrounded. It's a little teeny tiny donut hole in the middle of everything else that will be annexed. It's not on the edge of anything. This is just in dispute, and we've been promised this for months. So and Travis, we can have the exhibit when it comes to the vote on council, but it's crazy.
I was going to recommend that, Mary Jane. Hey, everyone. I'm happy to just distribute an exhibit showing what this piece of property is, how big it is, what the adjacent properties are, and then kind of how it fits into the project. Because unfortunately, it is a critical piece, mostly for access onto the actual project site. And I did want to also clarify that the bankruptcy proceeding has ruled
So we know who's ending up with what. It's just a matter of the deeds being released and the paperwork finalized and everything. So they're not still battling it out. It has been ruled on. We just can't get our hands on the deed to make the acquisition that we need. And as Carmen mentioned, we have letters of authorization from both parties involved, showing support and willingness to cooperate with us. So it's just one of those really frustrating technicalities here. And I appreciate you guys hearing, the sort of convoluted reality that we're dealing with right now. And hopefully next week we can get some clarity on that.
And Travis, I think just in the interest of time, if you could have that teed up for the public hearing and next week, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's comfortable. And it took us a little bit of time to get there, but we're all happy.
Okay, well,
we will be.
That resolution for us, and we will see that next week. Thanks, everybody. Okay, with that, we still have Carmen on. We've asked Carmen to look at other communities to come up with some regulations for our body art studios. In your packet, we saw some of the things that other communities are doing. And I just want to, I don't see any problem with what we've been presented, but I'd like to open it up with Carmen with an explanation and then any questions following.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So if you remember in August, and there's a memo from me in your packets, August of this last year, you all determined to adopt a temporary moratorium. It is a 9-month moratorium. So that moratorium is scheduled to expire in May of next year, May 10th of 2021. So there's some time here to decide what you wish to do. But if you remember, as a result of an application to open a tattoo parlor, an application for a business license, we as staff discovered that tattoo parlors, body art establishments, when the land development regulations, or the LDR, were amended in 2019 or 2018, body art establishments were changed from a conditional use to a use by right, which means get your business license if you're in a commercial district, and you're good to go. No other city review or oversight. So as a result of that, and we did, because the law had changed and an applicant had come in when the law was the law, we did issue a business license for a body art establishment in a commercial district. And that business can continue in that location as properly licensed. Council, however, decided to take a step back and stop any more such businesses from being permitted while you evaluated how you wanted to treat these in the future. And you directed staff to review and conduct a survey of how other Colorado communities, particularly of roughly the same size as Idaho Springs, addressed these kinds of establishments, if they did at all. So we undertook that kind of a survey, and the memo from my office has those results. And you can see on page 1, that list of, how many is that? A couple dozen communities. That list of communities you see on page 1, we looked at and contacted all of them, and all of them said, nope, we don't regulate these things at all. So rather than just say, oh, we didn't plan anything, I wanted you to see the list of communities we looked at. These communities don't have anything. You'll see in the footnote, because we were coming up with nothing, we even expanded our search to other states and also found scant little in other states except for the state of Minnesota, which is much bigger than Idaho Springs, obviously, and a little township in New Jersey. But we did, if you look on pages 2 and thereafter in the memo, we did find 2 Colorado municipalities that do have local regulation of these kinds of businesses, and those are Edgewater and Englewood. Englewood's a little, I shouldn't say little, Englewood's bigger than Idaho Springs. Edgewater's about the same size. And so I simply provided the regulations that are in place in those two communities in your packet so that you could take a look if you like. Edgewater has basically a local licensing process, which we did talk about as a possibility. Englewood does too, although their set of regulations is much more brief than Edgewater's. And council, I wanted to, one, give you a sense of what other Colorado communities do. And the answer to that is not a lot do anything. And then two, check in with you to see, because again, we still have time, you still have time to consider how you'd like to approach this. To check in to see maybe what direction you were thinking you might want to go at this point, given it's not a common approach that Colorado municipalities take. I think there are three basic choices for y'all. And we, again, sort of talked about this before, but to refresh your memory, you could leave everything as it is right now, which means body art establishments are used by right in commercial districts, and we're going to leave any further regulation of these places to county health and the state. You could leave the zoning as it is, leave these establishments as uses by right, and add a licensing piece, like Edgewater and Englewood have done in some way. And if that's maybe what you're feeling like, it could bring you back a draft ordinance that you could review again in a study session, maybe even a couple months from now. It's plenty of time. I think the third option is to go back to the way things were before the land use regulations were amended, which is to designate these again as conditional uses and have a local vetting and review process through the conditional use permit process, and not have a licensing scheme, but have it be a zoning requirement. So those are your three basic options. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the survey that we conducted or any of your options, as you like.
All right, council, any questions or directions?
Yeah, do we know how many body establishments are in business in all these towns that you, I mean, is there a collective number and how many already exist with these other communities?
No, we did not ask how many establishments are in these places. No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
So what direction would council like to do on this? Leaving our process by use by right, or come back for a conditional use process? Any thinking on council's thought?
Do we have staff to administer all this? I mean, we get into it in detail, and who on staff is going to administer it?
Well, we haven't come up with, somebody like we've done marijuana industry, that we hired somebody to go make sure that they're complying with the regulations. Unfortunately, I think this may have to be complaint driven due to lack of people going around. Do we ask our ordinance officer to go in there and check for and make sure that they're operating under the conditions that we have set forth for them? So, this is open for discussion. I'm just a little worried about, dedicating somebody, one of our staff members to be the admin and administrator and to be the tattoo parlor police.
It seems to me that perhaps we are dealing with regulation in search of a problem. Because we have quite a list now here that don't see it as a problem that's worth regulating. And I like the idea basically of going back to conditional use because of the flexibility and the fact that there is a more formal review, but not just let them go through by right. But I'm not sure that I would even be against that, to tell you the truth.
Do we have any idea how successful this business is so far?
I
Sales?
have been by there a couple of times, but the second time I went by there, the owner of the establishment was leaving town for a month. So, now they had somebody in here to be their artist while he was gone.
Right.
But I know but as far as how the business is doing, I have no idea.
Did you get a tattoo?
No, I'm going to Jim Clark's artist.
Did you put the city logo on your forearm? just teasing you, Mayor.
That's part of being on council. You have to get tattooed on your arm what year you were elected.
Maybe underneath my big toe, but no, I'm not so.
Carmen,
do we want to have another conversation and some thought about this before we direct Carmen of how we want to change our code and how we deal with these establishments? Because I think the real choice here is, of course, use by right or conditional use. And then the other is, how are we really going to enforce this? And again, I think that goes back to complaint driven. Somebody go in there and say, wait a minute, these people are not sanitizing their equipment properly. Then we would have to find out who goes in there and actually looks at what they're doing and make sure that they're doing it properly. So let's sleep on this before we actually give direction to Carmen. We've been working on this for a couple of months. We want to make sure to give direction that, unlike the Argo, that we don't have to change it. That was a joke.
Mayor, one comment. I just think that the number of towns listed and the just utter lack of, having any kind of special regulations, to me, speaks volumes.
Well, we really don't know that because we don't know how many establishments they may not have to do anything because they may not have an establishment.
I think it's a good idea to have another short conversation. I think all we need is a short conversation. I think we can come to resolution.
I agree.
Yeah, because doesn't the health department still regulate all these guys? I mean, don't they have to follow that and get inspected quarterly or monthly or something?
Nope.
No. As an initial topic, or when we first talked about this, Jim, we did reach out to both the county and the state saying, hey, how do you regulate these folks? Is there a licensure or, like you said, periodic inspection? And got the emails I can share with you because they're public documents. But what we got back was a big fat no. We really, much to Mayor's point, it's really all complaint driven. There are regs in place that have some hygienic requirements, and no one seems really interested in policing those. So that's sort of what led us there, Jim.
I wonder if there's concern about maybe, or a thought of just maybe excluding them from a certain zone, such as a historic district. And I don't know if that would be a fair approach or not, but it's a thought.
Sure.
Be simple.
Sure. Well, Mayor and Council, I wanted to really give you this information, particularly the results of the survey we conducted. And again, you have until May. So if you'd like to sleep on this, think on this, get through some really hard things like the budget, which I know you're getting ready to talk about, and maybe circle back around in January, that's fine with me.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Right. Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you, Carmen.
You bet.
Thanks, Carmen.
You bet, Mayor and Council.
Thanks, Carmen.
Yes, somebody gonna say something? Okay, well, we're gonna dive into the 2021 budget. Again, tonight we have Lorraine with us. So if everybody's ready, we're going to let Lorraine kind of walk through and Andy walk through what we've been presented tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What I thought I would do tonight is show you the proposed budget format that we've come up with. It's kind of an outgrowth of some things we talked about earlier about looking at your fund balances. And then I believe you've got some staff members that are going to talk in specific about their budget and or Andy. John, would we share my screen or do you want to share the agenda packet?
You can share your screen if you've got it up. It'll take me a moment to get it up there.
Okay. Find the share screen button. And I'm looking at the agenda packet. Page, I think it's page, the 24th page of your packet. Can everyone see that?
No, we can't see it.
There you go.
How about that? I'll drive, Lorraine.
All right.
So you go ahead.
So this is essentially much the same as you have seen your budget in the past, with just a couple of differences that I think may help you to make some decisions about your spending or your saving or whatnot. But starting with the first page, I've included a page here that shows all your funds, so that if anyone turns to the first page of your budget, they realize that you don't just have one fund. Sometimes people can turn to the first page and see general fund and they think that's it. But you have several funds, of course, being a municipality. And I wanted to point out that you budget 3 funds that are reported as your general fund in your financial statements that the auditors produce and that the city produces and the auditors audit at the end of each year. So for financial reporting purposes, what you budget as your cemetery fund and as your stormwater fund are considered part of the general fund. And this, for each funds available, if it's an enterprise fund, what revenues would be coming in during 2021 according to the budget forecasts, what expenditures are expected per that forecast, any transfers in or out, and therefore your ending fund balances. So at a glance, you can see that your beginning fund balances for the general fund would be $1.8 million, with revenues of $1.4 million, pretty conservatively forecast, as you know. Expenditures at $3 million, that would bring your ending fund balance down to $1.2 million. So it's easy to see what direction you're going in and what your trends are. Sometimes when you're looking at line item detail of what we spent this year versus last year, you don't see the beginning and ending picture. And that's what I'm kind of driving at with this new format. The special revenue funds that you have are your conservation trust fund and the 1% street sales tax fund. And these are called special revenues because they've got a revenues approved legislatively or through an election, generally that come from one source that cannot be used for anything except the designated purposes. So those 2 funds fall into that category. And they are both projected to hold their own or go up slightly during the 2021. Then you've got some capital project funds that run over the course of a few years. So at some point, your RAMP funds may be fully spent on the projects associated with that devolution. But as of the beginning of 2021, you're expected to have about 796,000 and to have about 50 grand in expenditures that year and still have 749,000 at the year end. The sales tax improvement fund was designated to show your capital projects on improvements, and you've got almost 4 million in there, with more coming in every year through the revenues, the way you've divided them. The sales tax, with some pretty hefty expenditures that year, but still ending up with about $1 million in ending fund balance. Then you have 2 enterprise funds, and again, your financial statements show both your water fund and the separate Fund 54 that you call Water CIP are really all part of a water fund. In governmental accounting for an enterprise fund, it has to be reported as one fund, no matter how many sub-funds you may wish to use to track various types of activity. So your water fund has, I didn't quite know how to separate those two funds in as far as beginning fund balances. So I put all of the fund balance in one, and the other one kind of has that negative part. But together, you had about $500,000 to start, $1.5 million coming in, $1.2 million going out, and ending up with about $848,000. Some of it's through projects, and some of it's through operate. Wastewater, starting out negative, but in 2021, getting some of those proceeds of your loan is what's budgeted, and then spending them on the project for the wastewater treatment plant, ending with $475,000. And then the city's also in charge of 2 fiduciary funds, which really means you're handling someone else's money, that you are the logical person to perform that task. So you've got the Cemetery Trust Fund with no activity forecast for 2021, and a police pension fund that has money coming in and going right into the pension, and so it stays pretty constant. There's your first summary page. Then we get into the next page, which is a summary of the general fund. And here we would start with the beginning fund balances at the top of the page, and then have pretty much everything the way you've always budgeted as far as revenue line items and expenditure line items. And then if you could flip down one page, Andy, we're going to flip back and forth for a minute between page 2 and page 3. Then at the bottom of the next page would be your ending fund balances. So we're showing the beginning fund balances at the top, then all your revenues by line item coming in, then your expenditures by department summarized, then the transfers in or out to give you your ending fund balance. So looking at the ending fund balance on this first column, which is actual 28, that is a real number, audited, final, $2,122,000 ending fund balance for it. It goes up to the top of the next column for 2019 as a starting fund balance there. You add these revenues that are totaled on this page of $2,724,000. You take out the expenditures of $2,725,000 and a transfer out, and that ending fund balance $2,103,973. We expect to be your final audited 2019 number. We've got it after the financial statements, we've reviewed it, and I don't think that's a number that's going to change. So you're starting 2020 with that number. So remembering the 2,103,000, if we could go back to page 2, Andy. That comes over to the fourth column, which is year-to-date 2020 as the beginning fund balance. The column to the left, adopted 2020, you didn't know that number when you were doing your budget last year, and it was forecast you'd only have $1 million, but you had more than $1 million more than that starting 2020. So I think this will help you to see where you are in your budgeting and to know how close you are to the nubs or how much extra you have. So beginning with the year-to-date 2020, these numbers were in here through August. September's numbers are almost final, but they're not in this report. But here you have 2,103,000 to start the year. That's the last real number that's on this page. Everything else is a forecast as to what 2020 really is going to end at, and therefore what you think 2021 is going to begin at. So going across the beginning fund balance from the year to date, starting with 2,103,000, that is in August. We expect at year end of fund balance for the year. These estimated actuals are going to be key, I think, to where you're going to end up so that you can see where you're going to start 2021. In your budget processes in the past, you've really focused on the proposed budget amount for the budget year 2021 and haven't necessarily taken a hard look at all of the estimated actuals for the year. So all the numbers in this column are the same as the adopted budget numbers. But obviously, we still don't know exactly what they're going to be, but on some of them, you may be able to come up with a better forecast of where those sales taxes really are likely to be at year end, where the property taxes are, where the fines are, based on what you know at this point. So going down to the page 3 again, Andy, it brings us down to the estimated total revenues, estimated actual, as I said, the 2,560,000 are the same as your adopted. And your proposed revenues for next year are similar, a little bit lower based on the economic uncertainty that you're facing, everyone's facing. And so then we look at the expenditures by department, and you can see that the trend here by those totals. So in the actual 2018, 2,459,000, 2019, 2,725,000. Adopted was to go up again to 3,055,000. And so we're sticking with that for this year, although it may be that that number is too high, because I know your department heads have been putting the brakes on some things. So it may help to reforecast the estimated actual. And then for next year, it's forecast to be a little less than this year. So bringing it down, though, bringing down your revenue, your fund balances to about $1 million at the end of 2021, if you're starting at the 1,592,000 that you would be starting at if you got exactly what was budgeted and spent exactly what was budgeted. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. The 3 lines below show what you had kind of committed, may want to commit for operating reserves and what's still unreserved and what's the Tabor amount that's restricted for emergencies. But we're going to work on those to figure out if there's any other restrictions, because I think there's some money missing on those lines. But these expenditures by department are what you're going to look at next. And each department has its own page or two to show all of its line items like you're used to seeing that would total these amounts. But this general fund summary shows it all together. And we would, going forward, Andy, you can flip to one of the next funds, maybe the water fund or any that you choose after the general fund. You're going to see, here's the streets, and comes admin. You've got all your departments are going to have their own expenditure pages that go back to that summary page.
Hey, Andy, does this all have all the wages and the increase, the 5% increase on insurance in this?
Yes, no changes in salaries at this point. It does include the 5.5% increase in health insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Here's one we can look at, the RAMP fund. Or this one's
I'm sorry, Lorraine, where would you like me to go?
This is good. I just want to look at one of the other funds. I'm not going to go through all these line items, but just to show you, this one had the most pages because of all those departments. All the other funds have everything pretty much together in 1 or 2 pages. So if we get to the page 24, would be the first page of the sales tax improvement fund. Here it reads the same way. You start with beginning fund balances. The amount that's there year-to-date 2020, 4,454,000 is the last real number on this page. We have used the same amount as budgeted for the estimated actuals. You can see that between the last 2 columns, beginning fund balance goes from 4,004,000 to 3,009,000. And it shows up to the right some notes about what these proposed line items are and how they were derived. So hopefully it can answer some questions as you go or help jog some memories, like what did we put in there for this or that, and see where you got those numbers. Then moving down to the next page, the revenues are coming in at 3 million. The expenditures are going out for these various projects. And let's go to page 25. Coming out, revenues totaling 2,342,000. Oh, actually 2,817,000. And it brings you to a fund balance of 4,179,000 at year end. So all the funds that appear this way, you can take your time going through it, or you can just go to the ending fund balances, however detailed you want to get. The details there, but there's summaries there as well. That's the basis of the new format, and it's not set in stone, so we can certainly change it or go back to what you've been doing, or make any further you'd like to see.
Andy, what did you have in mind for going through the budget tonight?
Mayor, the main focus tonight was going to be to have Lorraine talk about this reformatting of the budget. Wanted to see how council liked it. There's been very few changes, virtually no changes since the last version of the budget. So the main two purposes of tonight's meeting were to introduce this new format of how the budget is presented, to see if council's comfortable with it. If you are, then we're going to move forward to our next work session in 2 weeks to have a final draft of the budget for council's consideration and in this format. At that time, we will have been able, as Lorraine mentioned, none of the estimated actual for 2020 have been reviewed by the department heads and by me. That's a quote new column that is going to help inform our budgeting process, and we'll have much better numbers in those columns. We will also have fine-tuned the requests. So again, the two purposes were to talk about this new format, and then secondly, Chief Malenka was not able to attend our last work session, and we did talk about his budget, but I wanted to give him the opportunity specifically tonight to talk about the police department budget request for 2021. And then if there are any other general questions from council, that would kind of be what we would do tonight.
Okay. Is council comfortable with the format of this of the budget?
Looks good.
I like it better.
Yeah, I like it.
Everybody's good with it?
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. So I guess, do you have anything else for us, Lorraine?
No, thank you. I'm going to beg up. I've got another council meeting to zoom into tonight. So good to see you all.
All right. Thanks for hanging with us, Lorraine.
You're welcome. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Night.
All right. We got Chief. Andy, you want to take us to the PD budget?
Yes. Okay, Chief, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
All righty. So I did highlight your budget when we were talking 2 weeks ago, but turn it over to you to mention whatever you'd like to about your budget.
Yeah. Of course, like any other city, law enforcement is undoubtedly and quite customarily one of the most expensive operations. And the reasons for that is that police officers traditionally are paid a little bit more than many other city employees. That said, that although we are in the regional pay scale, we traditionally are always at the bottom of that pay scale. And I'm very pleased that in the last 5 years we've been able to recruit talent that prefer officers that prefer to police in small towns. But one of the things we contend with, of course, is 10% of our budget goes to the sheriff's department for dispatch services. In a way, it's sort of like we're re-taxed. Property owners pay a county tax, and then on top of that, we pay for this service. That said, it's still cheaper to contract with them versus have our own dispatcher communications operations at the present time. So hence our budget is estimated to be about $1.2 million. I'm not quite sure. I haven't had a chance to talk to Lorraine, but our year-to-date spending since this was prepared was a little over $800,000. She estimates at year's end we will have spent $1.3 million, which is over our budget.
Hey, Chief, if I may interject, I wouldn't get too concerned about that estimated column. That is the new column for our budget spreadsheet.
Okay.
And we're in the next 2 weeks, we as staff will be taking a closer look at that number. That right now, those numbers are the same as the budgeted. So
Okay.
You're absolutely right. That is an artificial number, and we all need to take a close look at that and see where we'll actually end up. And that'll be likely less in most cases.
Okay. So we have come in under budget the last few years, not by a lot, but we were pretty close. The only adjustment I would like to make is that in contract services, which includes that $180,000 next year for the sheriff's department. That's 5105, Andy. I'd like to add another $1,800 for that. We are going to get licenses for Cassell so that Danielle and Cindy can receive payments for the different services we do render to the public. People can pay with a credit card. And of course, there's an upfront cost. We're buying the license. So regardless of who's in that position or if they move on, we own that license and we can assign it to other administrative staff. Also, our contract with the Colorado Rangers is going up from $3,000 to $3,900. That, in essence, is an insurance plan. The Rangers, since I've been here, they augment the officers during special events, but they're also somewhat of an insurance policy. We have an emergency here. We're members of one of the 7 IGA organizations, and we have preference on requests for service. So it's sort of padding if we need extra staffing, if we have a catastrophic incident, or for some reason officers are incapacitated, they can come in and fill gaps for us. So I'm asking for an increase of $2,700 in 5105. Mike, you're rubbing your head. Did I just scare you?
Hey, Chief, do you have any capital requests for 2021?
I don't. We're still going to move forward. We went from that the original request for redoing the police station. We have it down to about $12,000 to just fortify the lobby. I've got to finalize that in the next couple of weeks. But really, the lobby has been closed, so it hasn't been a priority. And there's no telling when it's going to be open. But I would like, since we do have that funding this year committed, I'd like to go ahead and invest that. We're not requesting any new vehicles. Really, I think that's it. I think we're gonna, in the spirit of, trying to put a lid on our spending, we're gonna pretty much hold the line this year.
Okay.
Chris, I was just wondering if we are holding our position within the salary scales in this metro market, if we're holding our position pretty steady through the years, or if there's any slippage in that or gain.
Well, we did our study last year, and there are definitely agencies where we're significantly better paid than other agencies. We start our officers at just under $25 an hour. I think, you know, the farther you are away from the metro area, the more reasonable is the cost of living. But unfortunately, you know, all of our officers live in the metro area. So in that light, you know, they might have a little bit more challenges than officers that might work for Broomfield or Arvada or other departments. But they knew what they wanted. They wanted to work in a small mountain town. So I think, you know, this year, we'll be, you know, we'll be fine. We'll be able to maintain the staffing we have. I don't anticipate anybody's going to leave for other departments.
Okay.
So, and there will be a little bit of a savings. Of course, when I depart in March, the chief that will come in after me will most likely start at a lower salary and then work up. So there should be a little bit of savings there. One thing I would caution you all though is when that position is filled, that we don't drop the salary too low as to dissuade a larger selection pool, competitive pool. So other than those two items, I think we're set.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Good point.
Council, any other questions for the chief? All right, good work, chief.
Andy has yeah.
One thing I might just mention, it still is the plan over the next few years to move the police department to the fire department once the Clear Creek Fire Authority occupies its new building. And so that is something we're still working towards, to get a much better facility for the police department that's located closer to downtown. And that will, you know, the fire department building is a city-owned building. And Mayor, would you want to just give an update on where things are with that process?
Yeah. So last Thursday, the Transportation Commission met, and it is official that a property does belong to the city of Idaho Springs. All we need to get is the deed. So what we'll do is we'll enter into an agreement of some sort, whether it's a 50-year or 100-year type an agreement with the fire authority. I believe that the state CDOT would like it better for the CDOT to be the owner of this and work a lease agreement with the fire authority. So that has been approved. It is going to happen. We will be moving forward with that as we speak. We're going to start planning and looking for grants for that fire station. One other thing before we go, I want to mention real quick, as we had discussed, we picked a November 1st drop dead date for our downtown outdoor seating and reopening the streets. After discussion today, with the bad weather, we're going to get really cold weather coming in this weekend. The majority of the group on our task force requested that we go ahead and get everything off the streets this week. So we're gonna cut it short. We're gonna by Friday, we're gonna send notices out to all the business owners downtown, and by Friday they should have everything off the street. What was the other reason we were gonna shut it down? Oh, because of the parking. If you've noticed, behind all the businesses on the highway side, CDOT has come in and put a bunch of barriers in, Jersey barriers. Well, when we saw that this morning, we found some problems with that. So we immediately called CDOT and got them out there. They're going to move some of those barriers. But we felt that with we're probably losing close to, I would say, 100 parking places in the downtown area. And we felt that it would be necessary to recoup some of those parking places, to go ahead, open up Minor Street, get those 40 to 50 parking places back, because they're going to be well needed over the next several months. So if anybody mentions it to you, that's instead of the November 1st, we're doing it. That's Friday. What's the date this Friday? 23rd. I just wanted everybody to be in the loop of that in case somebody approaches you with it, that you'll be informed of what to tell them and why the group made the decision to go ahead and do this earlier.
I certainly agree with that. That last bit of news is a really compelling reason to open up the street. I was going to question it, but after learning that, it's the only move we can really make to make sense.
Okay. All right. Good work session. A lot addressed tonight. Does any of council have any other questions or comments before we go? Besides, I know John Curtis is going to say your Cowboys are losing, so I see him laughing.
Oh.
Now my brothers.
All right, thanks, everybody. Good work, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Good night, all.